We will begin our public hearings momentarily, but first we have one item of business to take care of, namely action on the minutes from our previous meeting. So if one of my colleagues has a motion on the minutes from, what day did we meet? May 13th?
Move to approve the minutes from the last meeting, May 13th.
Discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Our minutes are approved, setting the stage for our public hearings this evening. They will be announced from the podium by either Heather or Jeff, and by way of process, if you are not familiar with our procedure here for the hearings, we would ask that the applicant or the applicant's representative come to the podium, provide your name and address for the record, and then a brief summary of the application. Following any questions from the commission members, we will invite members of the public to come forward to speak in favor of the application. And then likewise, we will extend an invitation to the public to come forward to speak in opposition to the application if there are any people desiring to do so. Where comments are made in opposition to the application, we will encourage the applicant to return to the podium and address those comments made in opposition. So with that, I think we can get started this evening. Heather, please, our first application.
Thank you. Good evening, Commission members. Mr. Kulik, the first public hearing is SP 1913. This is a special permit to establish a fitness center at 871 Van Rensselaer Street. Salt City Enterprises is the owner and applicant, and this property lies within the Lakefront T5 zoning district.
Thank you.
May I have got some handouts?
We're good about sharing.
Share. Who should? Share.
Good evening and thank you. Len Montreal, Salt City Enterprises, property 871 Van Rensselaer. And if you look at your first page, you'll see where that's located. And it's actually a couple buildings down from the treatment plant, 2 buildings down from the Buried Acorn. Has 3 pre-engineered buildings on either side of it, and that's what this is. So this is probably a 50-year-old structure. It's got good bones, but fairly ugly. I think we can all agree. Came across Parallax Gym. They're interested in coming in, fitness center, training. Here's the site elevation. You can see in the background there's another metal building as well. So trying to make it lovely is a bit of a challenge. But this is what we're looking at doing here. It's like a Trex material, weathers very well. Mape awning. Windows, insulated. And these existing columns, so we have 3 different finishes, and we're asking for permission to have 3 finishes. But these existing columns, these are there, so they're brick. They're in good shape. So we're going to paint those, get rid of the siding, and enhance this band here, make it a little bit more pronounced. We get into the next page, the upper right-hand corner, you can see that the windows, we adjusted those, are taller than they are wide. So they're 4'8" by 4 foot. The existing that face the other 2 buildings, we're going to leave and paint this for now. And the other side of the building was basically going to be some infills, and we were going to wrap approximately 30 feet of finish, see how it goes. Hopefully the fella is successful, and if he's successful, we can spend more and make more improvements. Could easily ask for benefits, but I choose not to. So that's what happens when you get one of these old buildings. It's always a challenge when you don't have the extra funding to spend on these. The next consideration was the parking, and we have approximately 45 spaces. I know we needed a few more than that, but there is parking all along on Van Rensselaer. Currently, Core has it all down the first part of the block between Kirkpatrick and Bear, and we'd like to mimic most of that. Obviously, we can't park near the fire hydrants that are there or any of the other openings, but speaking with the gentleman from Paralux, he doesn't see any issues with that. Other than that, I think that's about it. Any questions?
Check. Any questions for the applicant?
So you just explained that you basically are saying you potentially may have to make a few changes later on.
We would like to. We would like to, increase the finishes. Right now we've redid the parking lot with this drawing. We have the curbs, we've got the trees. We basically hydraulically disconnected the building drainage from the municipal system. So this has been all redone, and really will be nice. Trees, everything that we've added, but we would like to be able to have a continuation, which obviously we'd have to be back again, but we would like to be able to continue that. So if the gentleman that's going to be running that is successful and can pay the rent, we're going to plan on continuing to finish off the building. We'd like to do the other side as well.
Like, you're using an if with successful and all that stuff? Like,
Yeah, well, you never know.
Is it? Like,
If he isn't, then we'll have another tenant in there. Otherwise, this, see, not many come do, as I would call an if come, which means start working on it, do it, and hopefully it works out. Otherwise, this is what we have. So those are the options. So we're putting our own funds up to get this thing going, kick off that corner, kick off that area. And keep in mind that we are 2 buildings from the treatment plant.
Gotcha.
And every neighbor is this kind of building, which is also across the street from where they've got the spoils from the dredgings that they're doing. So,
Okay.
there is where the challenges lie when we're doing these projects. And we're here for the T5, and we've got other properties that are in the T5, but difficult to think that we would be able to get residential in this, which is part of that with the mixed use. Love to if we could. We do have some residential, but at this point in time I think it would be extremely difficult.
Last question.
Sure.
I'm not too familiar with the space, so I'll have to check it out.
Yeah.
But how and if are the other properties around being considered with this project?
Okay, the one directly behind it is part of Anno Plate, which is just a storage building, a warehouse, which is what this was. The building on the next corner is Buried Acorn. It's a brewery. The building west of that is the old NES Rentals building, where they rented high lifts and things like that. So, the Buried Acorn is a nice transition. It transitioned from really another metal building warehouse to now a brewery. And they do get people there. They do have food trucks there. As I said, next to it, we've got another vacant piece of property. Across the road, there's a vacant piece of property. So those are the challenges, for us. So yes, we would love to continue. We'd love to be able to do it all right off the bat. Just the budget doesn't allow it.
Okay. No further questions.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
I have questions about
Sure.
the exterior. You're basically repairing all the elevations except the main elevation where you're going to add a new material.
Correct, yes.
And the new material is on board. So
Yep.
basically you're talking about an extruded aluminum product, which aside from where you have an existing metal siding, you're basically proposing to introduce more metal siding as opposed to, for example, one of the allowed materials is cementous clapboard.
Yeah, and it's, yes, and it's a, I mean, we could do the cementous clapboard too.
I know that, and actually, I just want to ask staff for clarification. If the applicant is not changing an existing condition, so all the other facades are metal, are they required to change them, or so the only thing is where they're actually adding this new material? It would seem to me that
I really don't have a preference with
I
that.
was
It's the
gonna say,
same,
it would
it's
get
the
rid
same
of your-
installation,
Get
it's,
rid of one of your waivers so that you could just be using one of the allowed materials.
Sure.
And I'm not sure whether, I was looking for where the drive-it was, but again,
no drive it on that.
okay.
No,
Okay, so my only recommendation is, especially since you're using it in a vertical format, that it would be just as easy to use cementous board.
we've used it. We've
Okay.
used it over on Kirkpatrick Street.
Okay.
We used it over
Yeah.
on Spencer. So
That's what I'm thinking, we've
No,
seen
no,
it
no.
from your projects before. so- Okay.
Not at all. Don't really have a preference with that.
Okay.
So
And
that's
that's my
fine.
only question.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
All right, so then, I think you mentioned it, but just for the record, the main waiver then will be the off-street parking. And they would have 45 spots available, and they're asking for a waiver of the other 50 that they would need, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
First, we didn't, but we should probably ask you to address, I'm kind of hearing some alignment of agreement around the material and maybe taking out, using one of the approved ones, so that eliminates the need for a waiver.
Sure.
At that point.
Yep.
You still need the waiver on the parking, and
Correct.
you just give us a justification for that. We asked for justification for each of the waivers. In this
Yeah.
case, we've, I think, just eliminated one, so could you address
Yeah.
about the parking?
Well, generally, he's is not going to be exceeding that because a lot of that is going to be appointments and the way that he does the training. He's involved with Terrakeet and several of the other corporations here locally, and he'll have groups that are coming in. So, you may have 40 at a time, so we really shouldn't be exceeding that by that much, but when it has special programs or, it's a charitable organization so he may have a bunch of kids in, and when those times, you're going to have an overflow parking. So I believe that's a requirement from zoning is the additional spaces. It's not from the owner, but something that we need to ask for the waiver. Right.
So you're saying the nature of the programming is such, he does groups
Right.
at a time from a
Right.
given employer, and they may be,
Right, yes, and
Yep.
there is on-street parking there as well, not in front of the fire hydrants or the other curb cuts, but if you see core developments, they're striped, the road is the same size, and that could continue right down through there. You've got a couple pieces on the corner that McKesson had that were polluted, that, if we get some cars or get some traffic there, get people parking there, I think there's an opportunity, where there's people, there's commerce, and we need that to be happening to get more of a draw, to get more people there, to maybe buy those two pieces that are for sale, that are polluted, on either side. And then you've got another 4.5 acre parcel next to it. So maybe when this gets cleaned up, there's some other activity, and that's all we're trying to do. It's just to leave it like that. The easy thing would have been just to paint it. I don't want to come in here and ask for that.
You also said there was on-street parking. Is it odd even both sides?
There is no odd even. It's
just
yeah.
anytime-
People have been parking there now. They were taking the dredgings from the inner harbor, and the fellows that were there were parked all along there today. There must have been 20 cars there today. So.
I have one more question.
Sure.
It really doesn't have to do with the site review.
Yeah.
It's more out of curiosity. Is the individuals going to be operating the fitness center experienced in that field?
Yes.
Either locally or
Oh,
elsewhere?
yeah.
When you say experience, how long? With how long have they been in the business?
How long you been in the business? 20 20-plus years.
Just kind
Would
of
you like to
vague.
say hello?
Say yes.
Introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Jason Harrington. I'll be the owner and operator of this business. One of the questions that I heard come up from the board was, how are the classes set up in the training format? This is going to be very different. This is more of a studio format than it is, say, like a YMCA, where just there's rushes of people coming in. So they run on the hour classes. Classes are set at 36 people max. So we will have a little influx on the hour, maybe have a little bit of in and out, but we're not planning for, say, you know, if you go to the YMCA in Fayetteville, there's, I don't even know how many people from 5 to 7 o'clock. It will not be set up like that. Now, Len did kind of mention, when we do have special events, there may be obviously more people than 40 people at a time in there, but then, you know, obviously the off street or whatever like that. So,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Probably going to want to deduct in the rent for that, so.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
We'll ask now if there are any individuals who would like to speak in favor of this application. If so, please come to the podium to provide your comments. Are there individuals who wish to speak in opposition to the application? If so, please come to the podium. So we have no one else wishing to speak. We'll declare the hearing closed and move to our next hearing. Thank you.
The next public hearing is R 1930. This is a re-subdivision to combine 3 properties into one lot. And this proposal is at 3800, 3840, and 3850 to 3862 East Genesee Street. May Memorial Unitarian Universalist Society is the owner and applicant. And all of these properties lie within a residential Class A1 zoning district.
If the applicant is here, please come forward. No one here to represent the applicant on this application? And they were notified? Heather, Jeff, the applicant did receive notification about the hearing tonight? Okay. Let's pause on this one and move on to our next hearing. And if the applicant should appear before we completed all the hearings, we can reinsert this back into the stack. And if not, we'll decide what to do then. So our next hearing, please.
Okay, the next two are companion pieces. One is a re-subdivision, R 1932. This is a re-subdivision to combine 3 properties into one new lot at 1226, 1228 East Fayette Street. Lynn Fenn is the owner and Paul Belinsky is the applicant, and these properties are within a business Class A zoning district. The companion piece is a special permit. It's SP 1914. This is for a restaurant at the same address, 1226 and 1228 East Fayette Street. Lynn Fenn is the owner, Paul Belinsky is the applicant, and again, they are both lie within a business Class A zoning district.
Thank you, Heather. If the applicant is here, please come forward.
So my name's Paul Belinsky, and I'm in the middle of purchasing these properties. The first thing is that the building was, the commercial building was actually built, it had an addition that was built, and according to the lawyer, the seller's lawyer, it was already existing over the lines, and I'm not sure which came first, the lines or the building. So Either way, though, it is crossing over the lines right now, and so before we can talk about having a special use permit, for me to even purchase this, we have to be able to have it so it'll, be, so it'll comply with the standards that the city is requiring. And the property lot is almost, it's almost 10,000 square feet. It's 9,900 square feet. And with a slight variation, there was a waiver towards the back of the property, and I'm not sure if that still stands or not, where it kind of veers over. So it could be closer to 10,000. But the house can't be split off from the property, from my understanding, because there's not enough land around the house by itself to be split off. But if all 3 lots are combined to 1 lot, then it should be enough land. And it's in the SU area. It could be ideal for student housing, and for the type of restaurant we're talking about is more something to be a coffee and pastry shop, so not a full restaurant, but more along the line of Recess, or the new Mellow Velo, or the Strong Heart Cafe, all of which have little to no parking. From my understanding, it's just street parking. But we're talking about putting in a parking lot that we can have 13 parking spaces. I was going to put drainage in the middle, put a dry well to collect the water, and so I guess the first thing we need to do is just talk about whether or not we can re-subdivide it to have 1 lot. I guess that's it.
So there are 2 distinct steps here, and for your convenience and ours, I think both, and probably the public as well, we're having the conversation about both issues, the re-subdivision issue, which I think is actually pretty straightforward, and then the special permit question, which entails a number of waivers as the project is now proposed. When all the conversation has ended and the hearings are closed, the commission will act separately on each one. But it's a little easier, it's kind of artificial to divide the 2, since both projects kind of lean on one another. So it makes a little more sense, I think, for us to understand the project better, and probably for you as the applicant to present it as one kind of unified project, even though there's some discrete steps that we have to take in order to arrive at the outcome that you're looking for. So I think my understanding is this re-subdivision question is probably pretty straightforward, in combining the 3 lots into 1 new one. And maybe we might spend the balance of our time outlining the operation of the coffee shop and what that entails, especially in terms of the waivers. And you may have heard us mention for the last applicant, each time a waiver is requested, we ask for a justification for that waiver, so that there is something for the commission to consider in either denying or granting the waiver, and so that we're not kind of making it up on our own. We're basing a judgment call information that the applicant provides. So maybe if you've given kind of the overview already of the coffee shop concept is what you hope to put there, maybe you could just walk through each of the waivers that would be requested under this application and provide a rationale for the waiver request in each case.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't.
No, and do you have a copy of those?
I do have the letter that he sent to me.
Okay, good.
Now, I did readjust everything so I can comply with all the, with everything that he had wrong, or with all the complaints that he had about it, or the, but there's only 2 things that I couldn't quite comply with. And I did email 2 waiver requests in for those 2 things, and so we can talk about those and talk about everything.
Sure, so there's been an adjustment in the project.
Yes.
Since it was originally filed, and it looks as though you figured it to eliminate the need for the waivers. And you have just, what, two?
Just 2 waivers.
So those are the two that you should probably speak about now.
Okay.
Just as a correction, your revised plan still had 5 deviations from the zoning ordinance. I handed out to the commission earlier this evening a revised staff report. The items in red are the corrections. The deviations in red are the ones that have been addressed and no longer deviate from the zoning ordinance. The deviations currently stand with the off-street parking. You do have a justification for parking.
Jeff, I'm sorry, the ones in red still need to be addressed.
No,
No, they
I'm
do
sorry,
not
the
need
ones
to.
in red, the deviations in red do not, were addressed and do not deviate from the zoning ordinance.
So,
12, 16, 18.
So the parking still deviates. The on-site curbing to prevent vehicles from encroaching, the applicant's proposing wheel stops in lieu of the required curbing. So that's still a deviation that requires, that necessitates a waiver from the curbing requirement. And then there's a screening requirement towards the rear of the property to screen it from the adjacent residential zoning district. And then the lot
in the arterial.
frontage and area, which you did provide justification.
understand how this is. Before we get to those, how is what is item 13 here? Driveways shall be located not less than 10 feet from the property lines. There's a 24-foot wide driveway, 8 feet from the property lines. Since the plan is not dimensioned, can you tell me how we figured that out? That's not a waiver any longer?
The driveway to the left, or
West?
to the west,
Yes.
has been shifted, so it is 10 feet from the property line.
On the drawing we have in front of us?
Yes, the full-size scaled plans did measure out, and I did measure them.
Okay. So it must be just 10 feet?
Yes.
Okay. So, and then a driveway opening on the public right-of-way can't be within 30 feet of another.
And
you're
he
saying it's
adjusted
25 feet.
He adjusted the width between the two driveways, so they are at least 30 feet apart. I don't have my scale with me.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna believe you. I'm gonna believe you. And then all landscaped areas shall have a bumper guard. So again, since it's not really a dimension and drawn, is there a note on here that says there's curbing everywhere?
There is. There's a C next to it, and the C indicates curbing, and there's a line. Can I?
Here you go.
So on the scale here,
Right.
C was for curbing, and each of these lines is a bumper curb, and there's a C that means there's curbing around this line here and around the line there, grass and curb.
Okay.
Grass and curb.
Right. And then, you're saying the proposed ground sign does not need a waiver any longer, right?
It never was.
Oh, no, okay. Dandy. And so the planting strip in the public right-of-way has been changed to 8 feet then?
Correct.
Okay. And the same with the concrete sidewalk has been changed up to 5 feet?
Correct.
Okay.
So those were all things that
Yeah, I can't see that on the drawing, so I'm gonna go
Yeah.
by staff's
had to,
comments.
would still need to be addressed had you not made revisions in the plan. So we removed those items from the category of needing a waiver, but we still have 5 areas, as either Chris or Jeff touched on just now. So can you address each of those and provide a rationale why the waiver is still needed? Jeff, you were starting to say something about, I think we have a statement here regarding the parking waiver rationale.
Well, I would just like to say that from a site design perspective, the parking doesn't really work. So scaled or not. So if you have two-way traffic, which you're gonna have, going in this one driveway where all the lots are perpendicular, 15 feet really is not, I mean, you need to be able to have two cars pass one another. So even if you do minimum design standards at 10 feet, that should be a 20-foot lane, and you've only got 15 feet. So it would be okay if it was one-way traffic, but obviously when they get to the back of the property, there's no way to keep going. So that really doesn't meet minimum design standards. And then the 4 spaces that you have between the buildings, on my drawing, it looks like it says it's 8.5, and that's usually a reasonable minimal space if you're talking about parallel at a curb where you're not parking next to a car. So, and again, because I don't have a scale drawing, I'm just concerned that even if it really is 8.5, that's pretty tight. And it's also the kind of parking that typically we don't see in a public lot because it requires people jockeying cars. So I have a little bit of a concern about, again, the design of those 4 spaces and whether or not they're really usable for a commercial establishment. If you want to think of it as like an apartment complex, everybody could, put their keys someplace and share jockeying cars. But for a restaurant, I think that's a more difficult idea to see through to success. So I just want to make that point about the parking on the long side here along the west, that drive lane really should be closer to 20 feet so that you could have 2 cars pass one another, because if not, if someone's trying to come out whereas a person trying to go in, they're going to be backing up traffic in the road. And the opposite could be happening if someone's coming in whereas the person who's trying to get out going to go, except maybe back into the parking space. So and I appreciate you're trying to give us the number of spaces, or as close to the number of spaces as the ordinance requires. It's just that from a design standpoint, that just doesn't work. So I think we need to rethink that unless Jeff's got a magic measuring tool.
Can I address it now? Or?
Sure.
Okay. So it is true that I'm limited on space, and I would like to do it to the as close as I can to your standards. The people the demographic that I'm focusing on are the students that are local. So many of them actually will be walking or riding bikes. Or I'm also focusing on just the office buildings that are across the street, like the Urology Associates, and there's several office buildings. So I'm looking for a lot of people that are just kind of walking over. The type of building and business that I'm doing is just supposed to be in competition with Recess or Mellow Velo or Strong Heart Cafe, which just have street parking anyways. So I'm the actual parking that I need, I would love to have exactly what you're saying. If there's a way that I can do it, I'll do it. If I could bump the line out a little bit farther and put that other lane in there, I'd do it. I'm limited to just the land there.
And I appreciate that, and I think it would almost be better to say, I can't do any parking on this site, than to ask us to approve something that's unsafe and wouldn't work.
Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. That's something I would propose to you, and I don't know, what are your thoughts on that?
This was just designed to be an auxiliary parking lot for the building,
Okay.
and I'm fine with saying no parking, and we could just call it our own auxiliary parking for the employees. That's fine. We don't have to have this a public parking lot, if that works better. There is lots of street parking on Fayette Street there. It's street parking all up and down.
You might be able to get a half dozen in some other configuration going across the site. I mean, you still have to think about how do you, like if they were here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, I'm upside down, wrong way, down here. So if they were head-in spaces, there might be a way. I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and design that right now, but that would at least give you maybe a truly minimum number, but at least that would be a safe and a workable design, so you might wanna think about that. But I think we would We would be doing you a disservice to say that this was an appropriate way of dealing with the parking, so.
Did have the surveyor write that out the way that you're talking about it, and we did make several designs. The only complaint was that the traffic, because if it's pulling front straight in, then the city planners didn't want the traffic backing out into
Right.
the street.
Yeah, again, if I had something to scale, I could give you a better idea, but I'll think about it while other people ask questions and see what I can come up with.
Other things he was talking about was the fencing in the back, and we can completely comply with that. We can have solid fencing, and on the side, on the west side, and also in the back. Right now, there is picket fencing, and there is a chain link fence that are back to each other, and there's a bunch of trees in the back. I do have pictures of that I can show you. So you can, I'm sorry I didn't make as good of a demonstration as the other gentleman, but this is the building, and that's the way that it looks in the back. I would have to clean up the trees a lot and put in some solid fencing, but it is.
So you're saying you will not need this waiver because you could add some fencing as a screen in the rear?
Exactly. I will comply with that. That's not a problem. And the curbing, I'll comply with that, with the curbing. The only things that I was asking for a waiver on was, number one was the parking. Okay, and there's these two waivers here. There's the Part C section. Okay, about this. Now, the 62 parking spaces was based partially on having picnic tables in the front, which we revised that so we don't have that anymore. So I'm not sure the actual calculated number now of parking spaces that would be required. So obviously we talked about that already. And the other waiver that I was requesting was because a restaurant is supposed to be on a 10,000 square foot area, and that if it shall be used for a restaurant, I'm 100 square foot short of that. And so I was requesting a waiver on that. Also, there's only 99 feet of frontage on the street as opposed to the 150 foot required. And so that this section standard, I can't comply quite with that.
So were those the two?
So it sounds like the curbing one you can address successfully, the fencing or the screening you can address successfully. We're now down to 3, 1 parking. Back to that in a moment. And then the two other that mostly relate to existing conditions, the frontage on Fayette Street and being 100 square feet shy of the 10,000 minimum. So I want to summarize and suggest some next steps. Pause for this consultation and also see if there are some other, no, that's fine. Additional questions, particularly with regard to the
So I'm just
specific waivers?
clarifying, it's the parking, the frontage, and the area.
Yes.
And these are existing, non,
I do have a question. How does this space, considering the use of so much land, how does it benefit the immediate community members? Having the coffee shop, how does that benefit the immediate?
Very good question. So it is.
Pause 1 second. Especially the residential.
Yeah. Now, there are larger residential buildings that I think they're actually zoned commercial because there's so many apartments in them, that are newer buildings built on the sides, on both sides of these properties here. And there is residential behind it, which is turning into student housing pretty quickly. And so this is more of a relaxing atmosphere for students to come and use the internet, and they can use their laptops and study while they get some coffee. It's not designed to be a big restaurant or anything. It's designed just to be a place to come and relax and do your homework. similar to like a Starbucks or like Recess. And so number one, the buildings are there, and we just want to make the property look nice and well kept up, have a nice smell there, and bring people in there so that they can enjoy coffee and donuts. It's a pretty simple concept there. It's just supposed to be just a nice atmosphere, and the mostly it's students there. Anyways, I believe there's some immigrant housing there also, but everybody that it's not a rowdy or a loud atmosphere, so it shouldn't affect in a negative way the neighborhood.
Honestly, I don't think you fully answered my question.
I'm sorry.
Again, like you talked about you said immigrants who live there. How does this space benefit them?
Welcome to come and have some coffee with us. There's some newer housing to the west side that I believe that it's a combination maybe of both immigrants and students, from my understanding. It's newer buildings that are up in their apartments. There's many apartments in those buildings. So, I mean, as far as on one end, there's a vacant lot that is, overrun basically and not being taken care of. And everybody loves coffee and donuts and breakfast. So, I mean, I think it's a nice way for them to just kind of go out and get some breakfast quick. And it should just add to the convenience of the neighborhood, really. And I mean, there's directly across it, there's a bunch of office buildings. It's already kind of commercial area. So this should just be, a pretty nice addition to the neighborhood, I think. Does that help?
It does somewhat. That's it. No other questions for now.
I have just one last question. So typically we get, Neil, the transportation planner's comments. I don't see them here.
Right, so unfortunately, he did not comment on this for whatever reason, but what you can do is, if you'd like, you have done this in the past, we can work with the transportation planner to come up with a good plan or no plan for parking, but you would have to, and then you could approve it conditionally, keeping in mind that you would have to approve the waiver of parking at whatever number that came out to be provided the justification was accepted by the commission. So we could do that, or we could still work with the transportation planner and then come back with a plan that you are satisfied with, to see how many spaces that could safely be on site. So
I know he also comments about things like bike parking, and this is definitely going to be related to the general neighborhood. It might be nice to have Neil's comments for us to look at. And I just did a really quick sketch that no one should do anything with, but just for discussion purposes. Basically, you can get about 3 spaces in, and there is enough room where you could do a turnaround, so stacking would not happen in the street, stacking could happen inside. It still would require a parking waiver, but I'll give it to staff, and then where we go after this maybe can be used as at least a jump-off start for discussion.
I did actually talk to Neil about this ahead of time. I did meet with him, and he did seem to be okay with the design of the parking. So I know we can discuss it with him more, and if there's any way that we can make it work, then that should be fine. He did. I know there's usually 1 curb cut per property. Because of the fact that there is a house here and it has its own driveway, he said that would be fine if it had a curb cut for the driveway there. But we did just briefly sit down and we went over the plans, and he seemed to be satisfied with them.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so I think, to summarize, because this has shifted a little bit, I think we are down now to a project that would need 3 waivers: parking, the 10,000 square foot deficit, and the distance frontage on Fayette Street deficit as well. So those are the 3 waivers that we're talking about, I think. Are you
on board? And
okay,
everything else I can handle.
Okay, and So I would normally defer to Catherine and ask about some options here. We could keep the hearing open for a revised plan that would primarily, I mean, the other two existing conditions, you're not going to do anything about those. It's only the parking and what kind of a parking, workable parking plan you come up with in consultation with staff, the transportation planner, and this nifty design as you go parking option. So is there a feeling that we should keep the hearing open, see the revised plan, perhaps at our next meeting if you're ready then, and then we can review that and make a determination at that point. Okay?
I have several plans. I didn't want to give you a whole bunch of plans. We tried to talk about it ahead of time to see what would be the most, what would be the most ideal, I suppose. And this was the one I thought was the most ideal according to what we had talked about. But we'll work with them. I don't know if you want, should I sit down with Neil and go over some more plans? And
So we'll give you a call, and I'll try to coordinate a meeting, and
That would be great. That's good.
we can all sit down together and then present a plan back to the commission next time.
sounds great.
Appreciate all the accommodations we discussed here tonight.
Yes, right, with the other waivers, it's good to get those addressed by incorporating different features into the project, so.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll continue to hold this hearing open. I think your presentation is probably complete, so before we move to our next one, even though this is being held open, I will ask if there are any members of the public who wish to speak in favor of this application. If so, please come forward, provide your name and address and your comments. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the application, please come forward with your comments. Okay, so we'll maintain this hearing open, and we'll move to our next hearing.
The last public hearing is R-1933. This is a re-subdivision to combine 4 properties into 2 new lots at 108, 110, 112, 114 William Street. Randall Hoos and Linda Finney and the Greater Syracuse Property Development Corporation are the owners and applicants, and all of these lie within an industrial Class A zoning district.
Applicant is here, please come forward.
Good evening. My name is Taisha Martin. I'm here with NIDA. I'm their project director. I'm here on behalf of 112 William Street. 112 William Street was acquired by the Land Bank in January of 2019. The lot is buildable and measures 34 feet by 75 feet. Rather than leave the property vacant, the Land Bank would like to sell the lot to the owners of 114 William Street. It's Ms. Finney here. And to sell the lot to Mr. Randall, who's the owner of 110 and 108 William Street. The re-subdivision will provide more green space and increase the homeowner's property value. The homeowners will pay taxes on the land and maintain the property, and we believe this is in the best interest of the city.
Okay, thank you. Are there questions for the applicant?
No.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of this application? If so, please come forward. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the application, please come forward. Additional speakers will declare this hearing closed. That's our last hearing for this evening.
So, hold it over.
So as is our So now comes the part where the hearings are closed and the commission considers action on each of the hearings held this evening. The first one, SP-19-13, was the proposed fitness center on Van Rensselaer Street. We have closed the hearing, but there is interest among at least one commission member to visit the site to become more familiar with the context for this proposal, and therefore we wouldn't act on it this evening. So in that instance, we should reopen the hearing. So I will ask if there is a motion to reopen this hearing, SP-19-13.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. So we have reopened this hearing, and we will maintain it open till our next hearing, allowing members of the commission to visit the venue for a better understanding of how it fits into the neighborhood. So there'll be no action on that application this evening. The next one is still open as well. So let me ask, I don't think anyone entered the room, but is there anyone from May Memorial Unitarian Universalist Society here to speak on behalf of R-19-30, the proposed re-subdivision on East Genesee Street? So my recommendation to the commission is we hold this hearing open and notify the applicant about our next meeting and ask for them to send a representative.
I do know there are persons in the audience that did come to hear about this, so if you could at least ask if there's anyone here to speak in favor or against, that would be appropriate.
Absolutely. So there's no presentation to which one can react. Nevertheless, I would ask if there's anyone wishing to speak in favor of this proposed re-subdivision in the 3800 block of East Genesee Street to come forward and provide your comments in favor. And seeing no one interested in speaking in favor, I will ask if there's anyone interested in speaking against this proposal to come forward to the podium, provide your name and address and your comments in opposition. So no speakers, but interested parties here tonight in the application. What we will do then is hold this hearing open, add it to our agenda for the next meeting, which is the 29th, 8th? What's our next meeting? 24th of June, and we hope the applicant will be here to provide an overview of the project. And again, the public will be offered an opportunity to speak either for the proposal or against the proposal before there's action by the commission. So this hearing, this application will also remain open. And that takes us to the proposed re-subdivision on East Fayette Street, R-19-32. Even though this is a separate case from the special permit that follows, they are obviously companion cases. I think we might as well hold this hearing open as well, unless anyone wishes to do otherwise. And again, at the next hearing on meeting on the 24th, we'll have the applicant back, if their materials are ready by then, to present a comprehensive view of both proposals, and the public again opportunity to speak either for or against either application before action by the commission. That brings us to the last hearing of this evening, the one we just heard, R-19-33, the proposed re-subdivision on William Street. This hearing has been closed. We are able to act on it if there is a motion. So I would ask now if there is a motion either way on the proposed re-subdivision on William Street.
I move approval for the negative declaration.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? That re-subdivision is approved. And with all those other hearings remaining open for our next meeting, Heather, is there additional new business beyond the authorizations
No.
for tonight? Okay. So it looks as though for the June 24th meeting, we have 8 new applications, plus, looks like 4 carried over from this evening. Is there a motion to authorize public hearings for all those applications for June 24th?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Abstentions? Those are authorized for the public hearings. No other business to come before us. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? So we are adjourned until the